Hello everybody. I see a lot of people coming in. I'm just going to wait a minute or two for everyone to join. And while we wait, feel free to jot down in the chat what company you work with, where you're from, where you're joining us from. Hey everyone, welcome. I see more people joining us. We're just going to wait a minute or two to get started. I'd love to hear where everyone works, what company you're from, where you're joining us from right now. I see, lots of people joining. Hey, Jessica from California. Hey, Louis. Hi, Thomas from Hamburg. Abby from London. Hey, Emma. Thank you guys all for joining. All right, we're going to get started in 1 minute. Keep adding to that chat. Hi, Moore, Sophie. Hi, Ria. Just 1 more minute and we'll get started here. Hello, everybody. Lital, Chrisella, Anat. Looks like we got a good global group here. Raining in California. Okay, well, let's get started in about 1 minute. I see Poland. Lots of UK. Okay, hi everybody, welcome. Thank you for already starting to engage in the chat. Looks like we've got a great group here. I wanted to welcome you to our webinar on inspiring productivity during a downturn. I'm Nora Stark. I'm a product manager. I'm a product marketing manager here at HiBob. And I want to introduce our guest speaker on the line, Roni. Welcome, Roni. We have Roni Siemens here. He has over 15 years of experience in leadership and coaching. His last 2 roles were at Amplify as a CPO and NatWest, where he led the Entrepreneurial Accelerator Program. He worked with over 400 businesses to help them scale. And I'm sure a lot of you might recognize him or his name from the hardcore HR community, since he's been super active there. And he's currently transitioning between roles. So look out for his next LinkedIn update. Hey, Ronnie.
Hi, Nora. Good to see you. And hi, everyone. Great to see so many different people from across the globe.
Yes, great to have you here. Thanks for joining. So let's move on to our agenda today. Roni, I'm going to come back to you in just a few minutes. We have a few items to get through and then we'll get chatting. So we're going to start with a brief background on market trends and the challenges that we're all facing today. And then we're going to have a deep dive discussion with our guest, Roni. And lastly, I'll give a quick product demo of Bob's talent management offering. And I want to note that we'll have several poll questions throughout. I see that you guys are already super engaged, so I love all of the comments and I hope you answered those as well. If you have any questions for our moderators, you can see on the bottom right that there's a question section. And if you want to chat with each other, you can do that in the chat area. This is a space for you guys to engage as well. And any questions that you have or that you want me or Roni to address, we will do that at the end of the discussion. Okay, so let's start with a question for everyone. At Bob, we include hobbies in all of our introductory shout outs. And I included reading in mine. Love reading. So I would love to get your book recommendations. I'd love to know if within your companies you have a space for sharing book recommendations. And I'm sure we can all learn from each other in this way. Let's see. If you guys see that poll area on the bottom right, that's where you can answer this question. Okay, I see the answers coming in. A lot more no's than yeses. This could be a great tip for you guys to bring back to your teams. And I'm just going to check the chat. Nice. Checklist manifesto. Butterfly and sweaty palms. These are awesome. Okay, cool. Keep those coming. We're going to move forward so that we can get this going. So I'm going to start talking about the market trends and challenges. Thank you. Okay, so as you all know, this is a pretty uncertain time period for anyone in HR and really everyone at work. We've been dealing with constant change and challenges, including engaging your global or remote workforce, while at the same time staying efficient to maintain quality and meet your business goals. This is the time to retain your top talent and optimize budgets so that you can not only survive, but thrive. I'm sure that your C-level stakeholders, including the CFO, are hyper-focused right now on cost savings, which means that everyone needs to be productive and contributing the most that they can. It's your role as HR to keep employees engaged in order to make that happen. You guys really serve as the bridge. You have such a critical role to play here. And now I want to show you the value of how we see talent management for everyone in the organization. And that starts with retaining your top talent. Once you do that, you can maintain productivity and at the same time reduce the costs. Because replacing costs and onboarding time is significant. You all know this as the creators of those onboarding programs. Sometimes replacing an employee can cost from half to double their salary. This is not the time that we can afford to do that. Next is keeping those people engaged by investing and developing in them. A great way to do this is by training and maximizing their potential to really get the most out of them. What we found in our research is that this is actually a blessing for employees as well, because they're looking for career development and they want to learn on their end. You can help them do so. And that last piece of the puzzle is making informed decisions regarding talent along with your key stakeholders, your managers and your C-level. It's really important to validate your decisions and use that data to compensate people fairly, of course, if you have the budget to do so. But there are other ways, there are non-financial ways of showing how much you value people. There are ways of making decisions around how to allocate resources in a way that makes sense for your organization. The bottom line is that this is the time to do more with less, and this is the time to be more data-driven to make informed decisions. But don't just take my word for it. Let's dive into our chat with Roni to understand his experience with talent management. And before we do that, I would love if you could add in the chat. You guys have been so great with your answers so far. I want to know is what your organization's top challenges are in relation to the trends that I just mentioned. Is it budget issues? Is it productivity? Is it, maximizing potential? I see lots of people typing. And then we can bring Joy into the chat. Sorry, we can bring Roni into the chat and kick this off. Maximizing potential. Thanks, Kalina. Budget. I feel that. Roni, you're welcome to join while we're going through these responses. Talent density. Finding the right candidates. Okay, great. Okay, so welcome, Roni.
Hi, thanks,
Again.
Nora.
Sure. While we're getting these awesome responses in the chat, I'd like to get your perspective. What have you been seeing in your experience during this time? How have these market trends and challenges that I mentioned affected your workplace? If you could set the stage for us, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. And thanks again for the invitation to talk on this topic. It's one that I've been fascinated with and absolutely love. So it's great to have this opportunity to talk and see so many other people that are interested in it. I guess there's been a number of huge macroeconomic influences that have happened over the past maybe 10 years, I suppose. If you go back to, for us in the UK, there was Brexit. There's been the global pandemic. We've got the ongoing issue at the moment with the Ukraine. We've got the global energy crisis, which is going on, and perhaps a little bit more localized. But we've all got burned by what happened in 2008 and thought that was behind us, and now we've got Silicon Valley. So big things that are happening, and I think performance management for me and talent management is hugely important all the time anyway, regardless. But what these kind of macroeconomic events do is really sharpen that. It makes you look at what resources do we have, and how can we maximize that in order to make sure that we're looking after our talent. I mean, if you couple that with the fact that there's been a tech explosion, I mean, I don't think there's a business or sector on the planet now that hasn't got some form of technology that's influencing what they do in business, and that increases competition. So finding the right talent is getting increasingly difficult. So when you find them, you really need to hold on to them. And for me, performance management is one of those tools at a company's disposal that can really help you to keep the very best talent.
Great. Thanks for that. And I love that focus on keeping the best talent that you have and making sure to keep them engaged as well. So I would love it if you could take me back. I know that you were part of the sourcing process at your previous company. I would love to know what that process was like. Why did you choose Bob, and specifically, why did you choose talent management within Bob? What did that look like for you, and what was your approach?
Yeah, sure. So Amplify were a reasonably small business, and when we started off, there was not much going on in terms of the people function and the sort of applications that we used around that. But we did invest early on in a very basic package, which is Zoho People. It didn't really give us a huge amount of functionality other than absence management. And for me as a people manager, I needed much more depth and breadth of functionality in order for us to do what we needed to with performance and looking after our talent. We moved through another package, which was Breathe HR. It slightly improved functionality, had an element of goal setting, but nowhere near the sort of visibility that we wanted, because what we were keen to do as an organization was implement something called objective key results. Now, I know you're very familiar with it, Nora, and at Bob, and I'm sure many people on the call here are also familiar with OKRs, but just in case, it's objective key results. That's what OKRs stand for. And when I did the research, if it was good enough for Google, I thought it was good enough for Amplify. So that was what we were looking to get, is an object OKRs and a system that would easily implement and integrate with that kind of process. So my job was then to look at a number of criteria, and the sort of 4 or 5 that I looked for was, first of all, a platform, HR platform that would be I could operate across multiple territories. Amplify was based in the UK, but we had presence in Europe, Asia, and the US. So that was hugely important. We wanted strong data, things like equality, diversity, and inclusion. What was our likes and dislikes? where people coming from, absence, that kind of stuff was important. Integration with existing platforms. So our team almost entirely lived on Slack. So that was a big deal for us. Employee engagement and celebrating success, that really visible way of celebrating and sharing kudos across the business was a big deal. And then finally, a performance management module. Everything I looked for up to that stage, I would need to procure a separate platform. And that was a big no-no. I mean, our team are already using 15 to 20 applications on a daily basis. I can see you nodding. I'm sure there are other people on the call that do that. So what I was looking for is to minimize it and have a one-stop shop for our people, talent, and performance. And yeah, HiBob came at the very top. There were 3 contenders. I won't mention the other 2 because they didn't get it. And I was very pleased to go and move over to HiBob about 2 years ago.
Okay, great. So it sounds like you were looking for an all-in-one system that could accommodate your style of OKR, goal management, and kind of simplify the process for a global company. Great. So once you made that decision, if you could share with us what that rollout process looked like. How did you approach it? How did you get key stakeholders involved and on board? Was it something that you launched all at once or in phases?
Yeah, so I thought long and hard about this, and coming from a position of when I first joined the business, we didn't even have things like job descriptions, like most startups, really early stage. You're just busy doing the thing, whatever your focus is and the main premise of the business, and the rest of the stuff kind of follows on behind. So once we started to get a bit more structure and process around the people side, then it was time to roll out a powerful system like Bob. So my decision, along with the senior leadership team, was to do it over a phased process. So we first took on HiBob, like I said, about 2 years ago. Maybe it was 3, but it was a fair while ago. And minimal training was required to get all the team members on that, and that was a big, big plus. We've got very tech savvy people, mostly engineers. So I wasn't too afraid of them having to work with a new technical platform, but that's not their main job. So what I wanted is something that was very easy, frictionless, and could be used right from day one. So that was implemented from the beginning. Very simple setup. And then when it came to OKRs, we wanted to start initially with a system where it was company level to begin with. And again, this is something I really liked on the talent module, is it gives you 3 tiers of objective setting for the company, and all of those are visible to everyone, which was a big plus for us. The company were quite big. One of our main ethoses was around transparency, and being able to see what everyone's objectives were was hugely important. But we didn't want to frighten people. We didn't want to come up with a big rollout and, get people perhaps to turn them off. We wanted to bring them along with the process. So it was company level objectives in the first 6 months, and everyone was able to see and track against those. And then we moved on. After the first 6 months, we moved down to team level. The visibility, again, is a big part of this. Being able to see what product we're doing, what engineering we're doing, and how the interdependencies of those was very, very important for us. And we could look across functions. Even a company that had a 50 to 60 head count, you can start to fall into silos unless you're careful. But having that visibility of what people's objectives were in different functions, and how we could influence them, how they could influence us, was again a big plus. And the final rollout then, so after 12 months of looking at company level, team level, and reporting on those on a quarterly basis, we then felt everyone was comfortable with the process and the system, and that's when we rolled it out down to individual level.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that. So it sounds like it was received well in terms of being easy to use, and that it reflected your value of transparency, which is really great to hear. So what type of results did you see after you started implementing talent management and OKRs? Is there anything you can share with us in terms of attrition rate or productivity levels or stronger communication, you just mentioned down silos.
Yeah, well, I'll mention a couple of things. I mean, the quick one on some data for you then. Whenever we ran surveys and performance cycles tended to have high 80s or 87% and above, mostly 90% and above actually. So really high completion, which is I've never seen that before with surveys in previous job roles. Um, so that was really good. And the attrition rate, there's a number of different churn rates on the system that HiBob have already baked in. And the main one for us was attrition, and that's a metric which shows how many people have decided to leave. So we were really proud that was at 15 when I left, and it was actually on the way down on the decline. So that was a great number for us to track. But around performance and productivity, one of the big things I felt, and if you ask the question in most organizations about performance management, you get a normal say of, oh no, here we go. It's hugely bureaucratic, it's labor intensive, and most of the work I've seen in previous incarnations and previous jobs went into the actual admin of it. And what we were really keen to do is have a way of very minimal effort in terms of admin, simplicity of use, so that the main focus of it could be on the valuable professional discussions between the team member and their manager. And that's what this system allowed us to do. We could create our own performance cycles. We could add in as many layers or as little layers as we want. And because of that, I think we had great buy-in from both the manager and the participant, the team members. And I never got the sense that it was, oh, here we go, the mid-year reviews are coming or the quarterly cycles are coming, because they knew it wouldn't take them a huge amount of time. And the evidence was all there. The one-to-one module allowed that to be all captured. It made it quite simple, and we brought the team along with us. The other thing it enabled, I think, from a performance management was consistency. So all of the managers were doing things in the same way. They're following the same cycle, the same process, asking very similar questions. And one of the benefits for that for us was we moved from your typical startup where you get a sense of people who are doing well and there's some big wins. People get perhaps progressed and promoted or salary increases. We wanted to move to a much more mature and transparent system, and that's what the talent module allowed us to do. It was very data driven and evidence based. So at the end of the year, when we had our salary reviews and we wanted to look at who was going to progress, it was done in a very consistent way, and it made the decision making pretty simple actually, because the evidence was there for you to see and took away a lot of the subjectivity.
I like how you put that. I think it's really important and very difficult to establish a standardized process that does take away the subjectivity and make sure that compensation is tied to actual performance. Can you share any other examples where you mentioned one-on-ones? We haven't discussed employee lifecycle feedback. Did you have an experience where you took some insight from employees? We always talk about employees, sharing their authentic feedback and wanting to be heard. Was there a time where you took that specific insight and brought it to leadership and it actually influenced policy or informed your decisions?
Yeah, so I mean, let's start with performance management. The first time I implemented a performance cycle, um, because of perhaps my previous careers where it was pretty lengthy, an awful lot of questions. I went down that track, and that was great about the survey module. Actually, is once we finished our first cycle, I was really keen to get everyone's opinions on things, and I was able to create a very simple survey of what they felt about it, what went well, what could be improved on. And I learned very quickly that it needed simplifying. We were a small business, we were moving very, very quickly. It took too much time, and there was no problem in them feeding that back. We encourage radical candor, and if I'm in the leadership team championing that kind of thing, I had to take my own medicine, and that was fine. So it was a learning and continuous improvement cycle. So that was one example actually of where the team said, The professional discussion part was brilliant. Can we do something about the length of the questions and how long it took to complete? So that was a learning for me. And the following time, the feedback was much more positive, and we got even higher engagement. Can I just mention about one other thing, which is kind of linked to performance management, but it's certainly centered around employee engagement. So one of the surveys, there are many baked into the system, which are great. You can just lift off the shelf and use. A lot of them have been, sort of looked at scientifically, which you can drive some nice insights from. But one of the things I introduced was the Gallup Q12 survey. Now, many of you on the call may know about it, but it's an industry standard way of looking at your employee engagement across the patch. It's almost like a pseudo employee net promoter score. But it asks a series of 12 very simple questions, and it focuses on things like, are you listened to? Are you heard? Do you get feedback? Do you have colleagues that you can trust? Do you feel the business shares information and communicates effectively? So I was able to create that survey and run that every six months. And again, it's that finger on the pulse of how are people doing? Are they feeling engaged? And are we really managing our talent effectively?
Great. That's a great use case. So thank you for sharing that. I'm sure everyone can take something away from those great tips. Lastly, I think we have time for one more question with you, Ronnie. I would love to understand if someone were to ask you which talent management platform would you recommend? Why would you recommend Bob's talent management solution specifically, and why now during this time? You mentioned, all of the changes and the challenges over the past few years. So why is it even more valuable today?
Well, I suppose if you work in an organization where you put in the time and effort to find quality talent, the high performers, and you want to retain them, there's many things you can do around that. Reward, remuneration, there's benefits, but I believe honestly that performance management is a huge part of retention of quality talent. High performers want to know how they're doing, how they can improve, and where they're going next in terms of their career pathway. So it was hugely important to have that. And finding a system for me that I loved actually the way right way down to individual level, you could have a golden thread of. So if I was a fairly junior member, but I could create my objective key results, my OKRs, and I could see exactly how that was going to influence the global objectives of the business. That visibility was really important and motivational, I think. So it doesn't matter if you were a junior software developer, you could see how you were going to influence the 3 or 4 main objectives that the business had set. So that would be one, the visibility. The simplicity of it was a big factor. The performance management, the HR side of things, that's not an engineer or product manager's daily job role. So this had to be something that was fairly easy to pick up and run with, and yet provide very powerful data off the back of it. And it does that in spades. So yeah, those two things, I suppose, the simplicity of the use, the powerful data, and also that visibility across the business of performance, were the main selling points from my perspective.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I'm sure everyone on the call does as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Ronnie. You gave us some great insight.
My pleasure.
Great. We're looking forward to having you back in the Bob community to continue offering your tips and tricks for us. Great. Okay, so thanks again. And I'm loving all the reactions. Thank you, everyone on the line. Okay, so now we want to shift. I'm curious to hear about y- everyone on the call. What is your experience and your familiarity with talent management? If you could go ahead and fill out the next poll question, that would help me have an understanding of your experience. Let's see. Okay, I see the votes coming in. Got some good usage with Bob. Some people want to learn more. Some people are using a combination of tools. Great. Thanks for filling that out. Um, Okay, so what I want to talk about next is how the Bob solution helps you invest in your best talent. I think we're going to close the poll in a minute and we can move to the next slide. So what I want to do is show you a quick product demo of how Bob's Talent Management helps you maximize your talent potential and people budget. And I know that everyone is looking for a more resilient and productive workforce, especially now. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up a product demo. This is going to be a quick overview because I obviously can't go into detail on everything today. Okay, I think we're ready to get started with the demo. So as you all know, talent management is relevant for every stage of the employee journey. And I want to start with tools for keeping everyone in touch and on track. This is about making sure that employees are heard, like Roni mentioned, and that managers are transparent. With one-on-ones, you can quickly check in to ensure that your people are heard. You can set these up for specific topics. You can see here that those can include 30 days, at the end of the year, specifically career growth. These agendas are all completely editable to make them work for you and your organization. And one-on-ones can be set up as part of a task list for managers, so you can decide when is the most important time for your managers to have one-on-ones with their employees. I also want to point out this record of meetings that is always available to refer back to, so you have a constant archive. And now I'm going to head over to goals. Also, as Roni mentioned, goals are for individuals, departments, and the company at large to keep everyone on track and aligned. Goals are tied to key results using the OKR method to keep them actionable. Individual and team goals can be aligned to the company overall goals. So I'm going to show you an example here. You can set an OKR by percentage. And you can also align them to the company goals to make sure that, everyone is sticking to those overall goals. And I also want to point out the status bar here, which is super helpful for managers to see that everything is on track. Next, I'm going to hop on over to employee lifecycle feedback. This helps you gain insight when it matters most. You can do this, one second. You can do this maybe 30 days after onboarding because you want to retain those people that you spent all that effort in recruiting. You can do it after a promotion or internal mobility or even as an exit interview. And this feedback can help inform your policies. Maybe it's about hybrid work. Maybe it's about how effective onboarding is. And then lastly, I'm going to go to company surveys. I know I'm just jumping right through. This is a great tool to measure engagement no matter how often you run them. I'm going to go into detail on this in a bit because I want to show employee performance management. This is all about gaining multiple perspectives and to form a holistic picture. These reviews serve as a way to kickstart those crucial conversations. And here are all the different review types. And I want to point out the flexibility here in terms of the option to make them anonymous or not, according to the threshold. Of course, that's up to you, but we recommend our own best practices in our help center. And then something really cool about the performance reviews is including the overall performance rating. This offers a holistic way to guide decision-making and compensation and more. So if I go into an employee and show their overall performance rating, you can choose which questions will affect this calculation. You can decide to share them with employees or not, and you can include these as guidelines in compensation to really keep it objective and remove the subjectivity, like Roni mentioned. Now, gaining intel and feedback is valuable, but a big part of your role is as HR is to help managers report employee performance to senior leaders to guide that key decision making. So with Bob, you can empower leaders with the right data that's easy to understand. Now I'm just going to go back to the surveys that I mentioned. You can see inside the company surveys, once you finish a survey and you go to the results, you have this dashboard that simplifies the results for you and your stakeholders, so you can decide the best course of action. You can see the trend over time, the participation rate, and you can even decide who to share these with and create separate groups. I'm gonna show you quickly how to share the survey result dashboard. So you can create a group for maybe managers or C-level. This is based on conditions, and then they'll have their own view. And without a holistic system, employee performance might stand alone and not be tied to any key decision making. The best part of Bob is really its cross-platform ability, such as the option to include performance data in a compensation cycle. I know I've mentioned that, so I just want to quickly show you what that looks like. Once you add the talent info into a compensation cycle guideline, it will allow your planners to make fair recommendations based on actual performance. So I'm going to head over to the talent info. Yeah, just give me a minute here. Okay, so you can enable the goals and you can enable performance info as well. So that's it. That was my super quick and speedy, I hope that I didn't go too fast, overview of how Bob's talent management helps keep everyone focused, on track, and productive. Now I'm just going to go back to the slides. 1 second. I have one more question for you, and then I will get to answering your questions as well. I want you to think back to the challenges that you mentioned at the top of our discussion. What stood out to you as the most relevant or the most helpful? If you could head over to the poll and answer that now, that would be great. I see lots of activity in the chat. I'm loving it. I know that originally people had mentioned budget and productivity. So let's think back to those. I'm looking at the votes that are coming in. Okay, it looks like the majority right now is the product demo. I'm glad that my speedy demo was helpful for you all. Next is the live discussion. Thanks to the amazing Roni. Cool, it looks like that's the order so far. Thank you for answering. This is awesome. You guys have been great. Okay, so while you're still filling that out, I'm going to move on just to share with you all of the resources that are available because the discussion does not end here. First of all, we have the Help Center that we mentioned and that Emily, who's on the line, graciously shared some key help articles to point out to you guys. So there are amazing articles and tutorial videos in the Help Center, and we add to this almost daily. Also, our hardcore HR community is available. Just like you guys are engaging in the chat and the polls today, the community is your place to engage, talk to each other, get those best practices, tips, and learn from each other. Keep this conversation going. Lastly, after this session, we will send a recording in addition to a follow-up video where I'll go into a bit more detail than I was able to do today. So those are all of the resources. Okay, and now I'm happy to address your questions. Let me head over to the chat and see what I can answer. A lot of time in the Help Center. Thank you, Tanya. Okay, so are there any questions for me, for Roni, for a follow-up? I'm heading over to see those now. I see Emily has answered a lot of questions already. Questions about one-on-one surveys. Let me see if there's anything I can pick out. And in a few minutes, we will wrap up.
I'll just quickly put in Nora, because somebody asked about the Gallup Q12, so I'll just put a link for people. They can go on that and find what the 12 questions are.
Great. Thanks, Ronnie, for doing that. I see the Gallup Q12. Ronnie, do you have any final thoughts to share? It looks like we had a super active audience and a lot of people found our discussion helpful.
Yeah, I mean, just in closing, I guess you asked me about what are the main selling points. I perhaps forgot to mention the fact that it is a one-stop shop, and what's impressed me hugely, and I've mentioned this to you, and I've said it on the community, is that the speed of development of the product actually. So when we started with it about 2.5 years ago, um, it's been developed incredibly, and that's hugely beneficial, obviously, to myself. The feedback that we offer as a customer gets listened to, and it's become increasingly an integrated process. So the one-to-one model, as an example, throughout the year that gets captured. And for us as a small business, those little things actually save time and create efficiency. So rather than having to go across to a Google Sheet and then onto a different platform for skills and then look at job descriptions, it can all be kept in one place. And that's a big deal for us. Anyone who's out there and on this call that's in HR, we've got to try and convince people to do these and get on board with it. And I think that's a big selling point.
Thank you for adding that. I appreciate it. I think it's a really good point that you made. So a lot of you on the call, we had that poll about your familiarity. So if you saw talent management a few years ago, it has changed and evolved significantly since then. I mentioned the help center articles are added and updated all the time. That is because the product is so innovative and so agile and really keeps updating. I've seen some feature requests in the chat, and we read and listen to all of those feature requests, and that helps define our priorities. So if you have any, please feel free to share those with your implementation manager or your CSM, because that really helps us. And Ronnie, I see a question about the typical implementation time for the talent module. Do you happen to remember what that was for your organization?
It was less than a day. Less than a day. It was
Oh,
very simple. Yeah, very simple for us. So I had the advanced demo first of all. I then shared it with the leadership team just to convince them it's the right thing for us and our business. And then, yeah, by the time we'd sent it out, in fact, because like I mentioned earlier, there was quite a few tech savvy people within the business. They'd explored it and found more of the functionality than I had. So, yeah, it was a very quick and easy process.
great. That's great to hear. Lauren, I see a question about what I just mentioned in terms of the roadmap. I think that the community is a great place for that, as well as your direct contact at Bob. They can help share. We update that quarterly, so we can share what's coming out. And of course, your feedback helps us in terms of priorities and considerations.
I can
I
see
see
Rosie's asked
Emily.
about job descriptions, and for us, the obvious place for us was to keep it in the docs section against the profile. So you can either add them in the company-wide documentation, which is a public space, or you can have individual job descriptions, which are kept against the individual.
Great. Thanks for answering that one. Danielle, you can join the community from your Bob account, from your profile. Right under the profile, there are languages and some other areas in the menu. So there's a quick link to the community. And there's really great information in there. You can join groups, you can join threads, you can ask your own questions. I think we're going to get to maybe one or two other questions and then wrap up. Thank you, everyone, for joining. This has been great.
Can I add to the response? I can see Francisco asked about the 360. And again, that was a further iteration on the product and the performance cycles, where you can select, because we're a tech company. Many businesses work where it's actually quite rare for us for our line manager to work directly with their direct lines and team, because they work across multifunctional teams in products. So actually, it's their peers and people from outside of their immediate team are perhaps best placed to provide that 360 feedback. So you can select not only within your vertical but across functional teams, which again was a massive plus for us, and gave that full wraparound feedback on how somebody is doing.
Great. Thanks for adding that, Ronnie. Okay, I think we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining, for taking the time out of your day, for those of you watching this recording. I really appreciate it. Again, we will follow up with this recording and another video specifically about company surveys. Check out the Help Center and the community for more, and let's keep this going because talent management is so crucial right now. Thank you again. Thanks, Ronnie.
Pleasure. Thanks, Nora.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.